Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel and another episode of The Breakdown. We are here in the studio. I know it's been a minute since we did one of these, but we're going to try to knock a few out. The Breakdown, if you're not familiar with it, is where we take questions from you or topics from you on YouTube and Instagram, and we really try to pick a few good ones and dive really deep into them here. Kind of a podcast look, but it's more of just a video talking about subjects to do with hunting, archery, life, whatever. So this episode, we are taking questions from, or I am taking questions from our YouTube channel. If you haven't been over there, well, you're here right now, obviously, because you're watching this. Please hit subscribe, hit the like button. Our channel's been really growing. We've been trying to make a big effort to put a lot of good content out, so I appreciate all you guys. But with that being said, let's get started. First question is from Jared Bass, and it says, where do you aim on a whitetail with the anticipation of string jumping and or whirling to or away? I think it would be cool if you broke down where you put the pin and where you intend to hit with different angles, yardages from a ground blind versus elevated. You mentioned this topic in a recent Texas hunt, and I'm intrigued to hear your thought process on it. So there's a lot of moving parts when it comes to that. It has to do with, every setup is different. And first and foremost, I try to build my setup to be as quiet as possible. It was the entire reason we developed tag vanes, to be so quiet, because I found out, we always called it string jumping. We always called, the deer ducking the arrow, whatever. But 9 times out of 10, I think the deer is actually reacting to the sound of the arrow coming at them. So, our goal is to make the arrow a lot quieter. And I think we did that with tag vanes. Obviously, you want your bow to be quiet. That being said, for me personally and my setup, I have found there's a few yardages that seem to be the worst for deer to be able to react to, or the deer do react and move on you. And that is that 35 to 50 yard mark is my least favorite distance to shoot a whitetail. And my setup is going to be running anywhere from 290 feet a second to 310 feet a second, given the year and the bow and the arrow and all that. So my bow is moving on pretty good, and they can still at 40 yards move so much, and so my whole argument through the years, and I've got so much criticism at times for shooting deer at long distances, 70, 80 yards plus, and they're like, a deer can move so much at 70 yards, you shouldn't be doing that. But the guys that are saying that are shooting deer at 40 yards, and that's the worst distance I've found to shoot an animal, because they hear the bow go off at 40 yards, and everything is so loud and on top of them when that initial firing of the bow happens, and the sound of the arrow coming at them, it really scares them, and it I think creates an immediate threat. It's not like a door slamming in the distance, where they might just pick their head up and look. It's close enough that it's an immediate threat to them, and their first reaction is to get out of there. And that's why they bolt and dart and whirl so much, I feel like, at that distance under 50 yards. The problem being past 35, that's still enough distance away for it to really affect how much they're moving before the arrow gets to it. So I hate shooting a deer at 40 yards. I've always said that's my least favorite yardage to shoot a deer. I would rather them be 60 than 40, just for that very reason. Now, obviously, you got to be able to shoot very well to take a shot at a long distance on a live animal. I'm not saying everybody needs to do that. I'm just saying 40 yards is worse to me, in my experience, than 60 plus yards, because of what I've just talked about. So that being said, 40 yards, let's just talk about the different distances and where I'm going to aim. 20 yards, I'm putting the pin top of the heart, pretty much all the time. If it's 20, I put my 20 top of the heart. Sometimes a really wiry deer can move a little bit at 20 yards at my speed, but not really. It's normally zips through them before they even know what's going on. Ideally, I want to hit a deer double lungs. I want to take both lungs out. From what I've seen, it kills them the quickest. And you can heart shoot an animal, and they can make it a little ways depending on where you hit them in the heart, and you're just trying to bleed them out. But if you take both those lungs out, it's going to be a quick kill. So I try to aim top of the heart at 20 yards and 30 yards, anywhere under 30 yards, because if I hit top of the heart, I'm probably getting both lungs. A lot of vitals, a lot of important stuff right there. And if he ducks just a little, I'm taking out both lungs, no problem. Now, once we get out to past that 35, 40, 50 yard range, I'm aiming bottom of the heart, because if he doesn't move at all, which happens maybe 1 or 2 times out of 10, you just get an old buck. He might be deaf. He might be so locked in fighting on a decoy, on a doe, whatever that might be. He's just not going to move. He's going to stand there and take it no matter what. Maybe it's raining, maybe it's windy, whatever. But there is that scenario where he doesn't move, and you have to try to give yourself the biggest window for success. So I try to aim bottom of the heart, and if he doesn't move, I'm still taking him out. If he moves 3 inches, perfect. If he moves a foot, I'm still getting lungs, and so if they drop more than that, they whirl. Some things are just out of your control as a bow hunter, and people will argue you shouldn't take 60-yard shots at a deer, and I say if you're going to say that, then you shouldn't take 35-yard shots at a deer, because what I've seen is they move more, they react more at 35 than they do at 60. It's not about a time. It's not only about the time to target aspect. It's about all the factors that make them feel that immediate danger. And so that being said, I really don't like a 1/4-2 shot unless it's top pin. Like if it's top pin range where I feel like he can't get away from me, can't move, he can't whirl. Like a deer I shot in Illinois this past season, he was 13 yards and I knew he couldn't move at all from the time that my arrow fired, and so I tucked it in front of that shoulder, and I had a window that's probably 2 inches wide I had to hit, but I knew he couldn't twist on me at that close of a range. So past 25, 30 yards, I definitely don't like that frontal 1/4-2 shot. So what I'm trying to do is stay away from the front shoulder past 35. I want to give myself, a couple inches to play with there, but like I feel like I know right where my arrow is going to hit if he doesn't move. If you're shooting a group like that at 40, I probably wouldn't take a shot at an animal, because I want to know within an inch of where I'm going to hit if that animal doesn't move. So I'll give myself a couple inches from the crease, bottom of the heart, height, and that's where I'm trying to hit past 35 yards. That's where I'm trying to break the shot, because I'm giving that animal a chance to duck, chance to move, chance to twirl either way, and I'm still going to kill it. It's a high percentage aim. The animals never go up, unless they're bedded when you shoot at them. So that's I could talk about just that single question for a long time, and it'd be really cool probably to do a full YouTube video on demonstrating that, kind of showing that with a visual. But just sitting here talking about it, that's about as good as I can explain it. Now if you get past 60 all the way out, I'm back aiming kind of just heart area, obviously. Never aim higher than the heart. I never aim out of the heart unless they're 10 yards. I just put the pin in the lungs and squeeze, maybe 20 yards, but even at 20, I'm starting to sink a little bit lower towards the top of the heart. But that's the answer for that. Hope that helps. This next question is from ABQ Fitness. A full setup breakdown heading into this hunting season. Your release, stabilizers, arrow weight, broadhead, let off, scope, etc. would be sweet. And then BD85 Sky said agree under it. So yeah, I can't really talk about the bow setup because it's not out yet and it's a prototype, but I can talk about everything else, I think. So I'm shooting a new arrow this year. It's an Ultra 166, which is what I used last year, but it's a lighter version. It's 2 grains an inch lighter than the arrows I shot last year, which is going to be huge. At my, arrow length, it's going to be over 50 grains difference for me. And I'm shooting, my arrow last year was a lot heavier than I like. It was 530 grains, but you know, the Ultra 166 was heavy, the original one, but super tough. And the LRP components that I use from Swacker are heavy. So just putting that all together, I was at 530. It's about 30 to 40 grains more than I wanted. Honestly, maybe more than that. So being able to use that LRP system on a lighter 166, I'm pumped about. So cutting that down 50 grains, my arrow is probably going to weigh more like, 480 this year, and it's going to be pushing 305 probably speed, something like that. I'm going to be using the LRP, the heads, which is like a 261 Swacker, but on that stronger stainless steel male insert that comes in. It's less parts for that micro diameter arrow. I love a micro diameter arrow for wind, for penetration, all of that. But I hate the component systems for most. So I'm going to be using that LRP system for that. Love the Ultra arrows though. I've been super impressed with the way the spine is on them. Just how many, how I get a dozen and there's a dozen good ones in there. They're tough. I made it through the whole season last year with one arrow. Shot every animal, every buck. I think it was 12 or 13 animals with one arrow. It was pretty awesome. Then on the back end of that arrow, I'm going to have a 4-fletched 225 driver with a 2 degree left offset. I'm going to run some kind of lighted nock. Not in love with any that there is right now. I've got a lot of recommendations, tried them all, and I don't love any of them, so I'm not sure which one I'm going to land on there yet. You asked me, let's see, the sight is an Excel. It's going to be the driver, which is a sick little sight with the short bar on it for the bridge lock. Really, really, really love that sight. I've used the landslide the last couple of years and love it, but this will be my first year with the new driver, and just playing with it a little bit and looking at it, I really like how fast and quiet I can move that thing up and down. So I'm going to run a 5-pin like I always do on the mover. It's going to go green, green, red, green, green, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, all 10 thou fibers. I'm going to run, the release, I don't know what I'm going to run yet. It'll be some kind of hinge release. Stabilizers, probably a 15-inch front bar for anything out of a blind, be the bridge locks, and a 10-inch rear bar. Haven't set this new bow up yet, so I don't know the weight ratio, but that'll probably be my bar ratio. If I go to a blind, I'm just going to run a really short bar with a lot of weight on it because my drawing so long. Let off is going to be 80%. I don't hunt really with less than that. I don't use any lens in my sight. I'll probably use like maybe a 3/16 peep. Probably the size from Hamsky, their Raptor peep. What other setups? I'm going to go over all my camo, setups as far as like clothing for early, mid, late, all that. But as far as on the bow, what else? The rest, I'm going to use the Q80, just like I always do for the bridge lock, just the best one there is in my opinion. What else, Michael? What else is on my bow that I could talk about there? Yeah, I think maybe I use the side plates for the grip. That's the grip I use on all my bows. I think that's it. I'll do a more in-depth, obviously, bow build with this new bow so you can see everything I'm going to be running on there. And all the speeds and specs whenever I can do that, whenever I'm allowed to do that. So there you go. Next question, kind of along the lines of what I just talked about a little, but this is from James Wright 7488. Release style for hunting purposes, which is the best? There is not a set in stone answer for this. It's whatever you're comfortable with, whatever you're most accurate with. For me personally, it's a hinge style release, a back tension, that kind. I really need that give. I need that movement of some kind when I'm hunting, because for some reason when I'm hunting, every scenario, doesn't matter if he's feeding in a food plot or so calm, but I feel rushed inside. I feel like as soon as my pin gets where I want it, that feeling of it needs to go now. hits me. And so the only way I've been able to force myself to slow down in that moment and really make a great shot is with a hinge style release, because it's very hard to rush or to snatch a hinge style release, or make and when you get in a rush like that, you make a lot of bad decisions. That's when you use the wrong pin. That's when all those different things can come into play. So for me, a hinge has really slowed down my mind. And even when I do need to hurry, when the deer's chasing a doe and I believe it stopped, you can roll through a hinge pretty quick but still make a clean shot. I've shot a hinge since I was probably 10 or 11 years old, off and on. I compete with it off and on. But hunting, for the last probably 8 to 10 years, I've solely hunted with a hinge. Now competing, sometimes I'll use a button, but never hunting. I think the last time I used anything but a hinge was on my muskox hunt, and it was too cold. I had to wear gloves the whole time, so I used a caliper style release and did fine. Like, I killed so many deer growing up with that and a thumb button, but I just feel more confident and feel better about how I make the shot when I shoot a hinge. So I think it's all about what you have confidence in. It's as long as you don't feel the need to just, as soon as your pin gets on fur, to snatch that thing like crazy. No, I lied. I did a switchback video 2 years ago. It's on our YouTube channel, where I went back old school, like when I was a kid, and I shot like a Scott Little Goose. Punched the crap out of it. Hated the way it made me feel, because I didn't feel like I executed a perfect shot. So for me, it's a hinge. But you got to find what you're confident in, what can slow your mind down, what you can shoot a great shot at a live animal with, and that's the right answer. Next question from Chad Richardson 4706. Should I replace my strings, tune my old 10-year-old bow, or upgrade to a new Matthews lift? Pros and cons of paying for an upgrade and all the accessories. Is it worth it? And what point does an old bow with old technology become too old? Also, don't know that there's a perfect answer for this question. I think it's, if you're trying to be the best shot that you can be, as far as like, if you're trying to give yourself every advantage you can have in the woods, I would say yes, you need to upgrade. Especially when you get to that 10-year mark, there's been a lot of innovation, and a lot of products that go on a bow, accessories, not just the bow itself. However, there's still guys out there shooting longbows and killing stuff. So it's all in what you're looking to do. If you're just looking to go out and enjoy nature and enjoy the challenge of bow hunting, and don't really have any, aspirations to be super lethal at, and getting better all the time and, becoming the best that you can be with a bow in your hand, then I don't think it's necessary, and some people might argue, I'm probably wording that wrong. I'm not saying that people that hunt traditionally aren't aspiring to be the best they can be, but they're not caring necessarily about being as lethal as they could possibly be. They're more trying to keep it like more purist bow hunting. They're trying to be the best they can be with that stick and string in their hand, rather than trying to find a stick and string and the accessories and the gadgets that's going to make them a little bit better. I did a video not too long ago on showing the importance of practicing over tuning and having new bows. I took a bow and set it up terribly, tuned it awful, timed it awful, the wrong arrows, unleveled sight, went out and shot a great group with it. And I think a lot of people took that the wrong way, is like, oh, then none of that's important. And that was not the point of the video. The point of the video was it's more important to practice than to spend all your time on buying new gadgets and gear. However, new gadgets and gear aren't always just gadgets. They're, a lot of times, they really do help. It might be minutely, because it's very hard to innovate in big jumps. You might look at last year's bow and this year's bow and go, man, it doesn't seem like that much of a difference. But if you start looking back at a span of 10 years and how those little innovations have separated the bow now from the bow 10 years ago, it's a pretty substantial gap. However, to enjoy bow hunting, you just need a bow. It doesn't matter when it was built, doesn't matter what you got. If you just want to go enjoy bow hunting, go enjoy bow hunting. If you want to give yourself every advantage you have, become a great shooter, buy the best product made. A lot of those are new. A lot of those are gadgets. A lot of those, some people might tell you don't help at all. But if it helps you 0.111%, it helps, and that's the way I look at it. I'm trying to be the best I can possibly be and give myself every advantage I can have without shooting a crossbow. I'll leave it at that. So that's what I would say to that question. The next question, got 2 left, I think. Yeah. Next question is from string_stalker. Hey Levi, I've been asking around and can't get a straightforward answer. What binoculars are great for seeing scoring rings on a 3D target? I'm talking more tack events and further distances. Currently using Vortex Diamondback 12x42s. They're great binos, but when it comes to seeing rings past 40 yards, they aren't the best. So I'm using the Santiums from Leupold, the 12x50s. I've found that 12x50s for me are the best I use them for hunting and for 3D archery and indoor archery. 12x50s has just been a great bino for me. 10x50s I used for a while, but there were certain targets I just couldn't find the rings on, couldn't find my spot on. 12x50s, I don't run into that at all. I've been able to call pretty much every arrow that's landed very accurately. And then when I'm hunting, it works in the timber. It works when I'm trying to glass the other side of a giant bean field and see how many points this buck has or what it is over there making a scrape. So works in the mountains, mule deer hunting, elk hunting. They're smaller, but they're powerful. They're super clear, affordable. That's the 12x50 is kind of where I land when it comes to the power. The specific brand and product is the Santiums 12x50s, and that's from Leupold, and those are great binos. I've used this pair I've got for 2 hunting seasons now, I think, and 3D seasons. So that would be my answer to that. Obviously, some guys go lower in power when they're hunting thick timber because they can't see past 50 yards anyway, but under 50 yards, I'm not really needing binos. I kind of can see what I want to see that close anyway, so I run 12x50s. Next question is from Jonathan Snyder 7512. Aging deer, please! ! I have a buck on camera that this year will be my 3rd year chasing him. The first year I have him on camera, he was a nice 5x4, or as we from the south or the east say, a 9-point, and guessed him at 3 or 4. But the pictures I have of him now look like he's 4.5, but he isn't. But isn't it really uncommon to have a deer be 1.5 with a nice rack? Please talk about it. Yeah, it is. And I think a lot of times when we have a deer show up that has a nice rack, trying to assume how old they are, very hard. Like if you don't know them from 1, 2, 3, 4 on, it's very hard to accurately say for sure how old the deer is until that October, November time frame. Early season, summer, and late season, if you don't have history with them, it's very easy to get it wrong. Now, there are some telltale signs, the sway in the back, the loose skin in the brisket, but honestly, you can go all over the country, from Texas to Mississippi to Kansas to PA to Illinois to Ohio River to the hills of Ohio. There's so many different little subspecies in there, and they all kind of look different. Mississippi's been really tough, but we take it very seriously on our club, aging, and it's so important, I think, no matter where you are, to have history with a deer. So it's so cool that you have history with that deer. You know how old he is. I would almost guarantee you he's not 4.5 now. He probably wasn't a 1.5-year-old. I don't know how big the rack was or where you're from, but, in most places, a 1.5-year-old buck isn't going to be more than 100 inches, in some occasions, they're bigger than that, obviously. You get freaks, and those are the ones you're after, and they normally get killed at 2 or 3 at 170. But for the most part, if you have a deer that you thought was 3 or 4, and now he looks the same, and he's 4, maybe a little bigger, or is 3 years later, he probably was 3 or 4 when you saw him. He just never made that jump. You know, some deer don't make a huge jump. Most deer only make one big jump in their lifetime. And then when I'm talking about like from one year to the next, they make a huge jump. They blow up, and then they kind of are very similar year after that. They might even get smaller. But aging deer is very, very difficult unless you have history with them, you know. And I've been around a lot of people that just get it dead wrong. They just guess. It's all it is. Even biologists, it's a guess. You can send the teeth in. I still, you know, we've sent teeth in that we had history with deer. We had pictures of them, for sure, same deer, for 7 years. And the biologist sends it back that he was a 5-year-old when we killed him. So nothing is for sure accurate that I've found. You know, maybe there's some kind of sawing the tooth and doing this stuff to maybe make it science. But I say, and the biologist we deal with in Mississippi says, have fun, do your best. You know, we really try not to shoot 3-year-olds or 4-year-olds down there, and in most places that I go. But if you have a surprise deer that shows up and he's a giant, well, me personally, I'll put it this way: if I have a surprise giant show up and I can't tell if he's 4 or 5, I shoot him because he's a surprise. I don't have history with him. I don't feel like passing a giant that's 6.5. Just might genetically look like a 4-year-old. I ain't that guy. You know what I'm saying? So I wouldn't get too stressed out over it. Yeah, we want to shoot old deer. Do your best. Do your best to log your trail cameras and history. Keep track from that 1-year-old, because it's, you know, a lot of times we see the 1-year-olds and we just keep scrolling through trying to find a big one. But next year, when you got a deer, you're like, who is that? It's really nice to go back and go, oh, it's that deer right there. That's him. So just try to keep up with history. That's the best way to tell for sure how old they are. And that was it. That's my last question for this breakdown. I did 6 today. I hope you guys got something out of that. Hope I answered those well enough, thoroughly. Hope I didn't make anybody too mad with my answers. But I just try to tell it like I see it, or like I feel, or what I believe. So that was this episode of The Breakdown. Thank you guys again for being on the channel. Thank you for all the support. And as always, please like and subscribe. That's really helping us out and allowing us to push this out more and get more content for you guys. We'll see you on the next one.